Yes.
So I'm going to be hosting a session for everyone who doesn't know me. I am Emily Rich. I am the Managing Director of Asia Pacific for Microsoft for Startups. And we're joined by Joel White from Ansarada, which is very exciting. So I am frantically looking for your bio, which I've just found. Okay. And I know a lot about Ansarada, but not to the point that you do, obviously, because Joel was the third employee of Ansarada. So this is why I'm going to use the bio that was provided to me. So today's topic is around raising capital and technology in preparation and execution of that. And Joel's here with us, and as I said, third employee of Ansarada. He's helped build the business whilst assisting on over 9,000 client deals so far. Just after joining Ansarada, he worked closely with the CEO to build the business, gaining valuable insights and experience over its growth from startup to the market leader in Australia now, and a respected provider globally. So he's worked at Ansarada for 14 years. Ansarada itself is a global B2B SaaS business with a big vision for a world where every business in every critical decision is always ready to act. So what Joel's going to do here with us today is share how technology features in capital raising and how you can reduce your costs, save time, and really give yourself a head start on your professional capital raising. So Joel, I'm going to hand over to you, and then we'll do questions at the end. I can take questions from the chat and relay them. So if people do have questions and they're thinking of them while Joel's talking, just drop them in the chat and I'll pull them out as well. And we can also do hands up and things like that. So whatever way works. So Joel, I'll kick it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Emily. As Emily's highlighted there, I've been working with Ansarada since the very beginning. Ansarada is a business that assists companies with their own deals, and we have expanded that business over time to assist companies end to end with that full transaction management life cycle. So very often when we're speaking to people like yourselves, perhaps in the audience, you might have been on a capital raising journey already. And generally that will look like that initial foray into capital raising will be something like the seed capital round. So we're approaching friends, we're approaching colleagues, family members, maxing out our credit cards, whatever it might be to start off our business. And then when it comes time to do your first sort of capital raising, go out to the market, go out to professional investors, that's often the first time that somebody will run into Ansarada. Because at that level, when we go to a Series A or even a Series B capital raising, we're exposed to professional investors for the first time. And at that point, we start to realize that professional investors have their own expectations about what sort of preparation you'll have in advance, what you will bring to the raising for them to make a decision, and what impression of your business you convey during that process as well. So Ansarada's big passion is helping everybody to realize their potential and raise that potential to the absolute maximum. And yes, it's common that you'll get introduced to us by your advisors at this point. But what we'd really like to come out to today with, if we were to hone in on one message for why you'd be watching this today, is there are steps you can take yourself to put yourself in the best possible position when that time comes, and to minimize quite a lot of the pain that comes with running your first capital raising as well. Because obviously when you're a founder, when you're starting up a business, all of your life, your energy, your emotions, every part of yourself is invested in this business. You're very busy. You're often doing more than just one job at the same time. And then on top of that, you're going to have to suddenly find time in your day to do this intensive process to secure more funds and keep that momentum going. Now, obviously, programs like the Startups program with Microsoft are invaluable and are really helpful for that. We're actually part of that program ourselves. But there are things that you can do now to make that process less painful. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, when you first start talking to an advisor and bring someone in, we're going to raise a serious amount of money at this point, so we need some professional help. It's quite often the case that that advisor will need a lot of material from you. And some of those documents you may never have heard of before. You'll find very quickly that the documents you need to raise capital are not the same as the documents you need to run a business generally. And so what that first sort of 6 weeks looks like when you first approach a capital raise is a very intensive period of your advisor trying to educate you on the things that you need, both parties working together to find information and pull it together in a form that we can go and present to investors, and often a little bit of rehabilitation of the business and your systems and your processes as well, so that we can present the best case, the best argument for why an investor should put their capital with you. And it's a very intensive period. However, it doesn't have to be. So I might start sharing my screen, and we might take a look at some of the things that you could do now to find out what those gaps are, to start collecting that information in an easy, gentle way, just sort of chip away at it a little bit at a time, and perhaps even build your business with future raises and future deals in mind, so that when that time comes, you can invite the advisor in, you're in the best possible shape already, and we can present a really professional front to your investors. If we can make that process easy, if we can come off looking professional, if we can come off looking prepared, your chances of securing that investment are so much higher. Rather than find out at the last minute, why don't we find out now and we'll work together. And in fact, everything I'm going to show you now, obviously I'm going to be relying heavily on Ansarada's own technology for this, is available to you for 12 months for free as part of the Microsoft Startups program. So don't be worrying about costs, don't be worrying about fees. Let's just approach this with the lens of, how can I drive my business forward? How can I be ready for that raise? How can I secure my future together? So there's a few elements to that. Obviously, we've talked about preparation, we've talked about execution as two things that Ansarada can help you with, and hopefully keep you prepared for future raises as well. Because of course, once you start raising capital, you're on that train for the next raise until eventually you come to an exit, which is obviously why your investors are giving you capital in the first place. So how do we stay on that cycle so we're not dropped into this 6-week intensive, painful process? Well, one of the easiest things you can do first is just to find out what you actually need in one of those processes and start collecting it. So Ansarada has built a platform that is most famous for the execution of these deals, and that's called a data room. Now, a virtual data room is very, very popular for all sorts of capital transactions. Fundraising, capital raising, Series A, Series B, business sales, IPOs, large funds will use these to raise as well. And essentially, it is the professional tool that an investor expects to find your documents in and ask questions of you during the raising process. Oftentimes, though, for a lot of entrepreneurs who are building a startup, they don't even know these things exist, and they can often leave money on the table by trying to invite investors into platforms that are not fit for purpose. You know, using a Dropbox, using a Google Drive, trying to send them an envelope, for example. Investors are very busy. They're evaluating many, many pitches per day and per week. They've only got so much capital to allocate. Allowing them to work the way they like to work increases your chances of a successful raise. I can tell you now, that is done most often in a virtual data room. So,
do you mind sharing full screen there, Joel?
Yeah, just you want me to just expand that up a bit?
Yeah, or if you go view, sometimes it'll let you go full screen.
Yeah, I usually leave this one to the side so I can pull some documents in and show you guys how it works. If that works.
Cool.
Is that okay like that?
Yeah, that's better.
All right, cool. Thanks for the feedback, Justin. Appreciate it. So a virtual data room at its core is really just a place where we can upload documents for investors to access them. This is why a lot of people's first inclination is to think, oh, I can just give them access to a Dropbox. A data room will do more than that because it is purpose built for running a capital raise. So for example, if you upload a document into a data room, an investor takes that document and they choose not to invest, if you've given it to them via a Dropbox, that's it. They keep that document forever. If you give that document to them via a virtual data room, you're actually able to reach out and kill that document no matter where it is, no matter where the investor has taken that document in the world. So for example, if I was to show you how that works, let's see if we could find someone who's taken a document. Here we go. So in this data room here, I have set up that Frank Fletcher is a potential investor from Cash Farm. You can tell he's got money because he works at Cash Farm. And we have invited him into our data room. He's been reviewing our proposals and he's chosen not to invest. During the process of doing his due diligence on our business, he's taken this document, which is why I've got the desktop open over here. And this document is one of our very sensitive pieces of information. It's got our most sensitive business strategy, and it's got our secrets and our secret sauce, and we had to show it to him to secure his investment, but he's ultimately decided not to invest. And we don't want that document out there anymore. So I've just got that document saved onto my desktop. Open it again so you can see there's no funny business here. There's the document. And that document could be anywhere in the world. Frank might have emailed that to 3 people if you've given him permission to view it outside the room. He might have put it on a USB stick and buried it in a hole somewhere. The second we come into the room and decide that we're going to remove Frank's access from our data room because he's chosen not to invest, that's also going to remove his access to any documents he has outside of the data room. So if I'm going to click on that document again, instantly Frank's told you do not have permission to perform this operation. That document on his computer is now a dead husk and is not going to open again. This is why it's so important to be aware that these technologies exist before you go down the path of raising capital. Obviously, when you start raising capital, you have to show your business to multiple people before you receive an investment generally. Even if you've got a really hot prospect, you might choose to show it to a wider pool of people to secure a greater level of investment or more favourable conditions. If that's the case, then you are designing a process whereby a lot of your sensitive information is going to be in a lot of people's hands. And knowing that you can turn those documents off at the snap of a finger is extremely valuable. So that's one of the reasons why people use a data room for capital raising. The second thing that's really valuable when you've got a lot of people looking at your information is trying to figure out who's actually interested. Investors can tell you all sorts of things on the telephone when you first ask them to take a look. They might say, yes, we're interested, and actually not be telling the truth. Or they might be playing down their interest, hoping to secure investment on more favourable terms. If that's the case, it'd be really helpful if we could get some sort of insight into the minds of those investors so we could figure out where to focus our time and attention. And that's actually what a data room is designed to do. So as people in this team access the room, they are creating an audit trail. Sorry, I've got a few rooms open at once here, so I might have to log in occasionally. I hope you'll be patient with me for that. They are creating an audit trail. That means every time they view a document on their desktop or view a document in the data room, we will be tracking that view and we'll be feeding that back to you via the reports so that you've got a quick insight into who is interested and is likely to give you funds and who is a waste of time and should be removed from the process. So here I'm going to generate a report from a data room that will tell me what documents people are looking at, how many times people in their team are looking at those documents, and I can see by just going straight down to the bottom of the column immediately who's really interested and really active and who talked a big game on the telephone but hasn't turned up to do any due diligence. If I see an audit trail like that, I know straight away that person's not serious about investing. This person might have been a little interested and given up. This person is likely to make an investment. I'm going to make my phone call there first. Now, the way that this screen works is very simple heat map. If you view a document, you get 1 point against that document. If other people in your team view that document, then you'll get another point there as well, and it's added up on a folder and a subfolder level. So here I've mocked up that I'm running a raise for a metals company, and I can see that the 44 views in this folder were made up of 17 here, 14 here, and 13 here. And then I can go into the folders and find out where the views occurred on individual documents. This gives me a great idea about perhaps why they're interested or what they might be interested in. Because ultimately, in these processes, we are trying to sell them on the idea of investing with us. The more we know, the better. So if I click on this document here that's got 5 views, I'll actually even be able to find the audit trail for that document. Who else has looked at this document and when? And we can see this one's attracting a fair amount of interest. And if I click on a person's name, I'll find the audit trail for that person. So this is why it's such an essential part of running a capital raise. When it's your business and every intimate detail of your business, your growth plans, your employees, everything you have, you want this level of information over what the investors are doing with it. This can also be a way that you keep your raise on track. So for example, here I can see that this person has logged in. This is one of my investors or potential investors. And they've reviewed all this information, but then I can see this piece down here where I can see a bunch of searches. These are searches that the investor typed into the room, things they were looking for, and there is nothing appearing to the right-hand side of the documents that they clicked on. What that is, that's an audit trail of someone who's looking for something you don't have. And by keeping an eye on those, you can start to spot issues that an investor might be concerned about, and perhaps supply some new information, direct them to it, and increase your chance of securing investment. So these are things that when you get to a certain stage and you've got advisors, your advisors are going to tell you all about anyway. But in those first couple of raises, Series A, Series B, where you might be doing some of the raising yourself, being able to use these professional tools immediately sends a different message to your investors. This is a serious business that knows what they're doing and is worthy of my investment. The more organized you look at this stage, the more likely you are to attract that investment. That has been our big learning over thousands of deals. The other thing that's useful with capital raises in a data room is even though we have these security functions in here where people can view the documents and we can still kill those documents later, it's done in a way that is very, very easy for an investor to use. And that's another reason why using this sort of technology can actually improve your chances. So what do I mean by that? Even though it's secured, when your investor has logged into this room, they didn't need to install anything. They didn't need to go and get a plug-in. They didn't need to get a particular browser or a particular computer. It works across all systems, which means your advisor gets invited, they're straight in, they see the information, they're focused on your business, they're focused on the deal, they're not focused on the technology around it. That's really important, and it's a very key mistake we see first-time startups make when they go out to the raising world. They don't understand that they're dealing with people who do this thousands of times a day and want to do it a particular way. The other thing that's really nice about that is it means that because they're not consciously aware of the fact that they're in a secure environment sometimes, we're able to get a nice view of their behavior and a very natural picture of their intentions. So what do I mean by that? Well, here I've got the audit trail of somebody who's bulk downloaded your documents outside of the data room. And they're actually viewing these documents outside of the data room as well. In this case, they've allowed printing. You can choose to not allow printing if you prefer. And we can see that all this activity is taken outside of the data room. Every now and again, seeing an intensive piece of activity that's occurring with document review outside of your data room, which is still being tracked by our technology, is actually a nice indication that that investor is more interested than they are letting on. Because when they're in the room, they might not be touching anything at all, and we've seen deals like this. When they're outside of the room, they're absolutely interested in reading through your information in detail. They could just be reading off their desktop like I've got over here, and it will turn up in the reports. And then perhaps that gives you the confidence when they come in with their offer to push back and secure a slightly more favourable offer. So you'll find that using a system like Ansarada is designed to protect you, but it's also designed to give you a little edge in those scenarios. Every little part of the process, making it a bit easier for the team to get in, making it a little bit easier to figure out who's interested, making it a little bit easier just to administer the thing. Those are the objectives we're trying to achieve. You're also going to find there's some AI at work here. So if I were to pull up some of the things we've done here, I've got a list of some of our clients on the screen. We've done tens of thousands of deals across the globe, including all throughout India and Asia. The advantage of that is we have been able to build up a very rich data set about what an engaged bidder that makes an offer for your business or to invest in your business, what their behavior looks like. And so we've actually built a piece of AI that will take your investors' activity and it will compare it to tens of thousands of other investors where we already know the outcome, which investors provided capital, which investors walked away. And we'll be able to tell you by day 6 with 92% accuracy and by day 7 with 97.8% accuracy who is acting like somebody that invests and who is acting like somebody that is wasting your time. If that happens, just like we did with Frank in the example before, you turn off the people who are not interested, focus in on the people who are interested, and keep an eye on their audit trail to find out what else they'd like to know more about in order to finalize their decisions. So you can see here what that looks like when it's delivered to you as a customer, or in this case, a partner, just like us in the startups program, accessing the platform for free. You can see that the scores there are given a percentage weighting. Anything above 50% is matching the behavior of a bidder that makes an offer. Anything under 50%, that's matching the behavior of somebody who does not make an offer. And because it's so accurate by day 7, we send that out as a weekly email. Now, just keep in mind, as with all AI and modeling, you have to it's most accurate when you meet the conditions it was modeled under. This is the most accurate model when you have multiple parties involved. So if you have a pool of investors, which is pretty common in capital raising, this will be perfect. Excellent. All right, so that's a little bit about the reporting, a little bit about the security, and it's a little bit about how investors expect to find your business. Now we might take a quick look at managing the Q&A portion of that process, which is an intensive period of asking questions. And then we'll take a step back and we'll look at how we got to this point. What can we start doing today to prepare ourselves for that future? So Q&A is a good one to take a look at. With Q&A, this often catches first-time capital raisers by surprise. You've just gone through an intensive period of gathering documentation to put into your index for your data room, and you think you've got just about everything you can think of out on the digital page, and then your investors are going to go through it and start nailing you with hundreds of additional questions, some you haven't thought of, some which they probably could have answered themselves if they just read through your material more extensively, and some which can be quite tricky. The important thing to note about that is the volume of questions is often very intensive. And it is often the case with first-time people running these processes that they assume, oh, look, we'll put the documents in a Dropbox, we'll send a link to the investors, and we'll handle their questions over email. And then when they get 6,000 questions in 6 weeks, it becomes quite intensive. If you don't put a system in place, the usual result is you get overwhelmed. You'll end up not being able to respond to everybody and you miss out on attracting some investment. Or worse, you end up giving the wrong answer to somebody and creating a bit of a warranty or risk issue for your business. So look, I'm no lawyer. I'm speaking purely as someone who's seen thousands of these take place. But one of the things that I have noticed leads to better deals and better outcomes is people directing all their questions and answers from investors through a process that they are in control of. It's a better experience for investors because they're going to get their answers faster. And I can tell you with investors, making it easy for them, getting the material to them the way they like, and getting the answers to them fast are 3 keys that will help you to secure your investment. The Q&A, if I'm to pull up I might pull up a diagram actually, and we'll just give you a bit of a look at an overview of what you would usually see in a capital raising process. So it's usually going to be something like this diagram here. Is that large enough, Justin?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay, so generally the way that this will work is your investors will be the grey dots on the left-hand side of the screen there. You will usually be on the right-hand side somewhere like this answer approval role, and generally some sort of advisor that you're working with will stand in the gap as your Q&A administrator. They'll be the first point that receives the questions, and you'll collaborate together to answer the questions, and then they will disclose back. And that's generally because you're paying for their advice to double check your answers from a commerciality perspective or a risk perspective or a legal warranties perspective. So if we don't have a system like this, this process is still going to take place, except it will take place over email. And generally what you're going to get from your investors is a big spreadsheet with bunches of questions in them. And as those questions come through to you from your advisor, you're going to look at them and you're going to know 20 answers off the top of your head. It's your business. 5 more might be a bit tricky. It might need to go to one of your colleagues because they're very specific to the subject matter that that person is an expert in. And still another 5 or 10 might need to go to your lawyers or your tax accountants or whoever it is that you're working with for those matters. Now the question becomes, when do you send back the spreadsheet? If you've received 100 questions at once, some of those questions they could have had immediately, while others are going to take two weeks perhaps to answer. And they're all jammed together because they've come in a spreadsheet. Whereas with this system, the questions come through as individual records, almost like an email, except we can traffic manage them and we can ensure that we don't miss any. And because the system is designed to do this, if a question comes in and you think it's pretty relevant to other people that are potentially investing, you can actually disclose that answer to the entire room. So I might pop the room back up now. What a question looks like when it comes in is basically a to-do list of things that look like email. So I don't think you'll find it very confronting, but it's flowing in a secure and controlled way through the workflow, just like I've shown on that diagram. So for example, if I click on this question, I can see that it's been asked by Frank, the infamous Frank, and I can choose to approve that and forward it to people in my team. And only people that I have said have a part to play in answering questions will appear on that list. So this might be a question that I want to give to Tim, for example, and that will send that to Tim. That will give him a notification, and his first view of Q&A will be the to-do list of just the things he has to work on. Now I can see that Frank asked this and that he's from the Forthright Metals Group team. If I just choose to disclose this answer, so I'll answer question, disclose this answer. By default, that will just go back to the team that Frank is in, the blue team. If I choose all data room users, that is going to send it out to everybody that's investing in this business, and it's going to automatically remove these details for anybody who's not in Frank's team. So that allows you to create an FAQ, sort of a repository of things that your investors are interested in, and that dramatically cuts down on your administration. If you're trying to do that by email, you can't accomplish it. That is one of the best things I can recommend for someone who's doing a capital raising and wants to reduce the amount of time they're spending, because that would take 50% of your admin out of the Q&A process, or out of the deal altogether, really. Okay, so that's Q&A. You can take and export of that into an Excel file at any time if you need to sit down and meet around the table with it. And the beauty of this is that obviously when you're doing due diligence and you are disclosing answers to potential investors and they're putting a large sum of money in your business, we need to keep a record of those promises that we've made to them, because it's going to form legal warranties that we've given them over the deal. So this Ansarada system is going to be tracking every single thing that has taken place, every promise that you've given, every question that they asked, and the detail that you gave in detail, and it's going to give you one central repository for that, and that protects you against future litigation. The point that you'll find, I think, your business lives, for those of you who have done capital raising before and have worked with investors before, is that those investors are going to be part of your business. They're going to be around for a long time, and disputes can arise. If you have these audit trails proving that you disclosed answers to them, Q&A reports that prove when they asked a question you gave the correct answer, that protects you against them coming back and suing you later because they want to get out of the business for whatever reason. So yes, it's about closing the deal, but it's also about protecting yourself long term. So what I wanted to do now is switch gears a second. We've looked at the end state. We've looked at the things you can expect to deal with when we're executing. Now I want to take a step back and look at what can we start doing now to prepare ourselves for this future. And this is the part of the webinar where we look at what you can get for free as being part of the Microsoft Startup Program. So here I have an environment that is actually built out like a template for you to follow. You see here I've got a bunch of empty folders. These empty folders can set up in a structure that an investor is going to expect you to have information for. A lot of the time you might have to go and create those sort of things. Corporate structure is a great one. You might know in your head absolutely everything about your corporate structure because it's yourself and a few business partners and maybe a family member or something. But an investor is going to want to see that mapped out in detail. So we have built a folder structure here that you can come in and populate. And in the workflow module, which is the project management component of this, we've actually also built out that same template with requirements and descriptions about what those things should include. So yes, we've got a folder for contracts and the subfolder for customer agreements. But if you come and track this through your workflow, which is also provided, and this template is also uploaded when you take advantage of that free offer, it's actually going to spell out in detail what those documents should include and a little bit about why they're important in a raising situation. And the idea of that is you can come in here and go property leases. Okay, I'm going to need to get those into one place. I need to ensure that they are signed and up to date and that they make good provision and accounting treatment for the rent-free periods are accounted for correctly. Perfect. I'm going to go and assign that to Tim because Tim looks after my property leases, and I'm going to tell him that that is due a little bit sooner. I think 13th of December is too far away. I would like to see that by the 3rd of November. And that's going to send a notification to Tim to tell him to come in, follow along with this information and supply that document and upload it into the folder in the index. If Tim has any comments to explain about that or to capture there, we can put those here. And what you're going to end up with is a record in your document index of documents that are ready to disclose to potential investors. Invite them in when they're on your roadshow, and you'll be able to refer back to your workflow if they start asking questions. Check the comments that Tim provided at the time that he helped you with this document. This is a really helpful piece of project management software. The other things that we're going to start managing during this process can also be uploaded into your workflow. It almost functions a little bit like Monday, like a project management software, or almost just like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet brought to life. It's central, it's secure. We can control who has access to it and who doesn't. Your investors will never have access to this, by the way. It's just for your sell side team or your raising team. So if I was to jump into one that's a little bit more built out, what I've been showing you on this screen is what you'll receive, a template to follow. But if I was to show you one that's mid-deal, it might make more sense. So here I'm tracking in my key contacts tab all the different people involved in my deal. And this is secured. It's only available to myself and my team that's working with me. Everyone else is locked down. And here I can just refer at a glance to all the different potential investors or people in the deal. If they've signed an NDA, I can upload that here. And it's almost like a simple CRM for a deal, a very specific CRM for a deal. Pop that in there. Things like the NDA and process letter tracking are quite important to build out here. So as we invite parties into our process, we're going to need to send them an NDA. We're going to need to send them an information memorandum. Sorry, NDA is a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement, which is usually the first thing that people sign if they're interested in performing due diligence on your business. Information memorandum is, I guess, the deal landscape's equivalent of a brochure on investing in your business, and it's often going to be an advisor that helps you prepare that. The process generally looks like giving an advisor access to your prepared data and to your prepared workflow so that they can go through, get the things they need, and publish an IM with which to bring investors into your process. Recording things like when we've contacted each party, when we've sent them an NDA, have we sent them a process letter, do we have the signed document back yet? Yes, we do. Is essential to track all these things. Now you might notice I've got a lot of tabs. There's a lot of moving parts in this process. And if you're not keeping them in something like this, it's going to be flying around on an email, and it's impossible to track when you're also trying to keep the wheels on running your business. So you'll note that if you can put a due date against a task in workflow, you can also view it as a Gantt chart and just have a visual representation of everything that's going on in your process. And these are all interactive as well. So if for whatever reason you manage to pull the initial marketing and provision of your information memorandum out earlier, you can adjust that in here, and that'll actually update the dates in your workflow as well. So this is all being provided to you free of charge for 12 months as part of the program. When you come into it, you'll be able to see these tabs that we've got prepared for you and start populating them with your own information, your own internal draft agreements. We've got a completion checklist for you there, a place for you to put signed agreements. But the most important step, the step you can take today, is go and sign up and start working through this list and start filling out your folder structure. Because whether you raise or not, or whether your business grows so quickly that you go straight into a sell-side process, straight to IPO, these pieces of information are valuable to investors because they measure the health of your business. Even having this information makes your business more healthy. That means the same information is going to be valuable to you if you do pivot to an IPO, or you do pivot to a sell-side deal or an acquisition of some kind, rather than doing a capital raise. It's the same information you're going to need even to govern your business. So it's an extremely valuable step to start early. In my experience, I've done thousands of these. The amount of times I've dealt with a business owner who has gone through one of these lists and a simple thing has really blown his mind. A great example I remember is in due diligence, it's really important to be able to provide signed customer contracts that are up to date as part of due diligence. I was speaking to a client once. He's like, oh, but I have a handshake agreement with 5 of my key suppliers. They're always going to work with me. Why would I need that? I'm like, well, that might be fine for operating your business, but someone who's going to buy your business or invest in that business, they don't have that handshake relationship. So they need proof that that relationship is going to survive if you get hit by a bus or for whatever reason, that sort of scenario. So those sort of little things are all covered in detail, so you can't miss a single one. This is part administration help, and it's part education for a lot of businesses. And it's set up in a way that you can start assigning responsibility to people in your team to help you with it and not have to baby them through every part of the process. And what you end up with is a progressively healthier and healthier business before the first deal even comes along. Look, that's probably enough of an overview at this point. Justin, I wonder if now might be a good time to consider some questions.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll jump back in. I think we've got one question in the chat. Okay, so I don't know why I was. Can I hear myself now? Okay, no, I can't. That's good. All right. So first question, Joel, is from Nick, and he's asked, is it that would not prevent screenshots or prints? Is it common for investors to be honest in this way?
Look, is it common for investors to be honest? It is not necessarily common for all investors to be 100% honest, which is why we need these technologies in the first place. It's a great question in relation to screen capture and those sort of things. Really great question, actually. It is essentially easiest for you to assume that any investor or any person you give information about your business is actively trying to keep that information full time. That is correct. So one of the things that we do is we encourage very strongly when you're configuring the security in your room, which I might actually do in front of you so that you can see what that looks like, that you set it to the maximum security you can get away with, essentially. So your question about printing, that one's actually fairly easy to prevent. We can turn on security controls here. So what I've got is a copy of everything in my data room. It's the security that's for the bidder one team, and I can control whether they are allowed to save it outside of the room like we did with Frank, or I can restrict them to in the room only. I can deny printing, which gets straight around your printing concern. They can't keep that document if I've turned on no printing. And I can also turn off editing, which only really allows them to put comments in the margin of a PDF file anyway. But the key thing, because of screen capture, because of things like every single person has a phone in their pocket with a camera on the back, is the watermark. Now, watermarks are probably your final line of defense, your most important line of defense in an age where people can take a photo. We do disable the print screen button. So you'll find with the internet security, it's about putting enough hurdles in place of somebody that the reasonable person stops trying to steal your stuff. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll deny printing. Obviously print screen's already banned, but I'll allow saving, because what we find is if everybody's been allowed to download documents during the process and they've got them saved on their desktop like Frank did or in a folder somewhere, they're not actively trying to take screen capture or take photos with their phones and edit it because they think they've got them. But with Ansarada, we can reach out and magically kill those documents after the process, which means they haven't had time or even thought about subverting your process any further, and that's very effective. Ultimately, though, keep in mind, they're going to have to accept an agreement as they come into the room, binding them into your terms of access, your confidentiality agreements. So we've got that one down here. Now, I've just obviously written these are the terms, but that would be a full and robust non-disclosure agreement, and they must accept that to get into your room. So we've got them there. We've got the audit trail that showed that they accessed and took that document. We've got the secure watermark that has their name, their email address, their IP address, where they were sitting when they took the document. And we've got that all tied together with the NDA proving that they promised not to. So if you find that someone does take your information and tries to use it against you in the market, you've got every recourse you need to seek legal action on that. Good question, Nick. Glad to see people are thinking through.
Great, thanks, Joel. I actually, if there's any, yeah, I do like the watermarking a lot. I think that's very, very clever. Thanks, Nick. I had a question actually that I think would be interesting, and please, for anyone in the chat, write your questions down. Put your hand up in Teams, and I'll call on you. But my question was around what is the. I mean, I think like what a lot of people are thinking as they're starting to capital raise. Like, what is the other option for them? Like, if you're not using Ansarada, you know, you're basically using you're using Dropbox, you're using Box in some instances for higher security. You know, are those the other sort of options to you, and then you're not getting this kind of security, you're not getting watermarks, you're not getting this type of thing? Is that why you see the uptake in clients that you do?
Yeah, and that's why programs like this one right now, this startups program, are so valuable, because in the early stages of building a business and your first couple of capital raises, you're not always surrounded by premier advice. Like if you go to Goldman Sachs, if you go to the leading law firms in any country, they're going to recommend a solution like this, and they're going to insist on it because they know how much it protects them and how much it protects you. In those early deals, though, where perhaps you don't have that level of advice yet, and we're doing more of it by ourselves, you're exposed because, yeah, the natural thing is to think, oh, I will use Dropbox. I mean, that's where I've stored the documents. I'll just give access to that. But that means we haven't been able to track who's interested and who's not. Every single person who's got access to that Dropbox has got those documents permanently, regardless of whether they perhaps have already invested in our competitors and are perhaps here just to take information and use it against us. We just find that these companies are exposed. So there's not a lot of competitors to what we do. People are going to end up using it eventually as their business grows in size. But there's certainly a lot of people who have used an alternative solution and left themselves exposed. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Do you want to add something, Justin?
I was actually going to answer Nick's question because I'm not too sure, Joel, if you've been privy across that, which is basically the next question would be what would be the regular cost after the 12 months free startup program. So okay. The discussions that we've been having with Ansarada, it's going to be very startup friendly. We haven't got a final price, but it's probably going to be around about the $100 a month price point for ongoing subscription. But there's going to be ways that you can either buy it as a one-off deal or it'll be on a SaaS model, but the final pricing hasn't been released, but it'll be very startup friendly.
Yeah, and that's really important. We don't want anyone missing out on using this technology because they don't think their business is big enough yet, or they don't think that they can invest those sort of funds yet. Realistically, without these sort of tools, your business may not get the chance to be that big if a competitor comes in and takes everything. So yeah, we're trying to make that as startup friendly as possible. Most of our clients will repeat using Ansarada hundreds of times over their corporate life. And so it's valuable to us to build a relationship with you early and start that relationship together. So yeah, we're going to keep that as friendly as we can.
Nick, ask away.
Great, thank you, Joe.
Nick had one more question, but that's okay. Ask away.
Nick, go for it. What's your question?
I think my question is not interesting for the majority of the people here because these are all looking for investors. So I would wait till every other question is answered.
Well, I don't know if we have any more questions, and we're almost to the end of the session. I mean, I could ask more questions, but I would love for. I mean, I think as Joel said, the idea is really getting this into the hands of the people who need it most. And that's why we've teamed up with Ansarada, and that's why we believe that it's so important, because we don't want to see our companies that we're supporting having this, having a bad experience at all in capital raising. And yeah, exactly, Nick, showing competence, showing, that this shows maturity in your company, right? You're not just sending them a Google Doc and going like, here's the link to my website, and here's, if I put my VC hat on, the amount of times I've seen that, you automatically sort of dismiss those things. And so as soon as you have rigor around it, this is what's so great about, and that's why it's important for us. We do have this relationship with Ansarada. It's important for us that first year's free, and then, as Justin said, we're going into that very startup friendly zone of being able to afford it. It's not going to break the bank, but it gives you rigor around your company.
And just adding to that as well, it's really large technology and VCs currently use Ansarada when they're deal raising as well. So I know, I'm based in Australia. The biggest VCs are using Ansarada when they're raising their funds as well. So you're using the same technology as the VCs are.
Yeah, and that's really key. They're in that all day, every day. That's their business, doing due diligence, making investments. So providing them with a tool that makes their searching efficient, allows them to get straight in and view the documents, is incredibly powerful to just sending a different type of message about your business to them. We're ready, we're prepared, there's no gaps here. We're not going to be asking you dumb questions about why you need that, because we've already got the template, figured out why you need that and got it ready for you. That attracts investment, it really does. And the top businesses in the world use this. All the major bulge bracket banks, all the biggest corporations are using this system. All we have to do to get you into the same place is just make sure the price is scaled down to fit a startup. That's all we're trying to do here. Like, for example, little things. I didn't even touch on this, but you're going to find there's little things lurking all throughout the Ansarada platform to help you. For example, here's a question. It's just lorem ipsum as an example that's been submitted by someone. Ansarada's AI will actually be warning you that other highly similar questions have already been asked. If you've got a process with 30 different investors in here, you want to be aware that you haven't answered that question a different way, a different time. And so Ansarada is going to help you cut down admin, but also just protect yourself against embarrassing yourself, protect yourself against potentially making a legal mistake as well. So there's little things like that. You upload a bunch of documents into our index and they're all mislabeled. The AI is going to label them, is going to sort them into the correct chronological order for you. Just little helping hands like that are all throughout the system as well. Probably should touch on compliance as well of our own platform. Hopefully, if you guys are in the tech space, that's at least in your mind as a question. One of the reasons why Ansarada does work at those top levels is because pre-2008, we realized that the tech space needed regulation, that one day every business would be thinking about risk and where their documents were stored. And we rebuilt our entire business around this information security management standard called ISO 27001. If you're in a similar business at all in the tech space, I'd recommend looking into that information security management control, because that is a ticket to play with larger suppliers and customers. So we built every single control of that security standard into our business, the way we answer the door at the office, the way that we secure our physical material, the way that our servers function, all those sort of things. It means that when you're vetting whether your material will be safe in here, you can go straight to that standard. We meet every single control on every single office. And that's why massive companies use us as well, because you can bet that these days they've got a large risk team drilling us on all those details before they get anywhere near putting a document in. So it's a shortcut for you guys. You might not have capacity to have a massive risk team yet, so you could look for those sort of qualifications as a way to know what's safe.
Great. Nick, do you want to ask your question?
That's very nice. Thank you so much, Joel. That was an awesome, really awesome demonstration, and it's really wow. I was not aware what's coming up here. That was really impressive, and I can see on so many levels how important this is. In my former job, I was supporting companies with presentations for investment rounds, and I can see immediately that this is really awesome. My question comes from a completely different side. This is why I wanted till the end to wait. Since I'm the only, we are the only project inside Project Amplify, which is not a company. We are not raising money, so we are really a non-profit here. But we are creating a really big platform with partners. And I was thinking the whole time while I was watching your presentation, whether we could use your platform to also be transparent and compliant towards our partners. And our partners are essentially something like little investors, because they send a little bit of money into the project, but it's not really the classical investor rounds, not the classical business investors. But you said that there is no specific software necessary. It's essentially all web-based. So we could use your platform and offer this information on your platform, this very structured and compliant information to our partners, and also handle all the questions coming from the partners in your great Q&A system. So I'm thinking of a little bit of hijacking your system for our.
Hijack away, Nick. That's actually, I've been very focused on capital raising in this presentation because I want to keep it relevant to where people are at their journey. Reality is this is a platform that makes it very easy to securely disclose information to a wide pool of people. I always say, what do you use the data in for? What do you use the platform for? Either when you've got a little bit of information that needs to go to a lot of people securely, or a lot of information that needs to go to even one person securely. The data is perfect for that. So yeah, all the mechanics that you're describing are going to be fine in here. We have businesses that use it, funds use it to disclose their, manage their investors. So after they've raised, they'll put their reporting in here. And you know that might only be these investors logging in once a quarter to view the LP reports. But it's just a very, very easy way to manage that library, invite 50 people to come in and keep an eye on information and partner with you. So yeah, we can set that up for you. That's easy and a very consistent use of the platform as well.
Well, essentially, that is a total game changer for us. I really have to follow up on that. This is exactly answering so many of our really burdens and questions, and helping so much, especially on the side of safe communication and also of professionality. As we said before, we show ourselves as a competence and professional partner. That's really awesome. Joe, thank you so much. Justin, Emily, thank you so much. Maraming salamat.
One final point I might add as well is Ansarada is not just technology. There's a team behind this that can help as well. We have a 24-hour support capacity. You can ring up. In 20 seconds, a human being will be on the phone and help you work through it. And that language support, you know, you could ring up our office and have your answers in Dutch if you want, or in German. Take a guess that Dutch might be more helpful in your case, Nick, if you like it. And then obviously a variety of additional languages. So that's a 24-hour team. We've got one in Chicago, one in Sydney, one in London, and then we've got offices all over sort of Europe as well, where we can provide that support if you want the help. So get in, use it, call us.
That's your investor sign in.
May I ask if you have already customers in the Philippines? Because I think a lot of startups here in the Philippines would be interested. Do you have already customers?
We're very popular in the Philippines and in Indonesia in particular. Those are two of our stronger regions, actually. So yeah, I can introduce you to my colleague Wakar. He heads up the Asia team, and he can tell you all about the customers we have already in the Philippines and in Indonesia. Or
Awesome.
help you.
You can just see it.
Super.
I think it's just worth mentioning in the chat, I've posted where startups can claim the free offer as well. It's in the chat there.
Yeah. That's what your lawyers are supposed to do.
Awesome.
Oh, they just put them. Okay. All right. Well, we'll close out. We're a couple of minutes over. Thanks again, Joel. This was great. And as Dustin said, in the chat there, we've got the link to startups. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, everyone. Bye.